Hey everyone, welcome back to Seekers of the Malediction. I'm Pat. Today we are doing a deck review for Auric Evenhand. This is my nickname deck, John Orwick. Just a little play on words there, John Wick, John Orwick. It kind of sounds similar, but also it kind of thematically fits. This deck really is designed to play Auric, make use of his great stats and abilities, and really just kind of move around the map in an elusive kind of way, making use of his high value spells to defeat units and just kind of be really annoying. It definitely feels like John Wick on the field, kind of going in and out, killing people, disappearing into the shadows. In terms of a fun factor, I guess this is the funnest deck I have ever played. I don't even think it really comes close to any of the other ones. It's just very thematic. You have very high highs in the deck with some really cool, crazy combos. And yeah, it's just a great thing to play. So even if you're not looking to be competitive, you're really just playing Malediction to enjoy with your buddies, this is a good one to lock into. With that, we'll kind of transition to my normal stats or tier list that I kind of do for decks. And that goes right into how competitive I think he is, or this deck is really. And I know, I won a tournament with this, the April TTS tournament. It was a 32-player event. It came down to mastery differential. I think there were 3 undefeateds by the end of it because there was 1 tie in there. But out of the 3 undefeateds, I snuck out just ahead of the second place person by 1 mastery. So I did win with this deck. But that being said, I do think that this deck is kind of probably around C plus range for how competitive it is. There is often very many games where I'm winning by the skin of my teeth, and it just never, very few games where it has a very convincingly I'm in control. This game has been over. I do think a little bit of that is attachments. I feel like in previous episodes and stuff, we've kind of talked about how attachments aren't really worth it. They don't really work. Auric, though, for those you know or have played him, he's all about attachments, really. I do think if they changed it so attachments didn't give up mastery, maybe he would be a little bit more competitive. Maybe it'd move him up to B minus B range. But with that said, right now I think he's around C plus range. I think there's just probably half of the other seekers I would put above him in terms of competitiveness. The other 2 ratings that we do, I'm going to start calling one player agency. So this is how hard it is to make the correct decision when playing this deck. And I think this is probably up there for one of the most difficult ones. I think those of you that have played Morta, she's probably the hardest one to play. So I would probably give this, on a score of 1 to 10, rather, probably an 8 or 9. And then the other one is board positioning. Obviously board positioning matters for any seeker, any deck you play, but this one is a little bit more forgiving. You kind of can just put your units down there, run them around, and really there isn't, the rest of your units aren't as important as long as you're just putting Auric in a good spot, everything, for any situation. So I think for positioning, it's probably a 4 or 5. All right, so with those out of the way, let's get into reviewing the cards that are in the deck. First and most importantly is Auric Evenhand. As I mentioned, you're going to be playing Auric every single game. That's kind of the intent of this deck, is to really maximize him. So he has 4 attack, 5/3 damage, 5 speed, 13 defense, and then 20 HP. He has Reforge, which is 2 AP, and essentially, I'm not going to read it, but it gets you an item from your discard pile, and you can put it on an ally you own within 6 inches without spending Echo. Man-at-Arms, which allows him to equip an extra item, and then counterattack whenever a hit is scored against this unit. You may retaliate after the damage resolves. Again, the low points on this model, or this unit, Reforge, an ability that you're just never going to use. I don't think it's ever worth it. And then his speed at speed 5 is a little low, but really that's it. Otherwise, I think he has a really good stats and abilities. 4 attack, 5/3 damage. The 20 HP are the things that are really calling out, as well as the counterattack and then the Man-at-Arms. Man-at-Arms less so, but counterattack is is going to do a lot of work for you here. I talked about how really just important it is to get Auric in the correct position. And when you do that, you kind of make it so your opponent doesn't really want to hit him because he will just hit them back even harder. I've often joked or mentioned when discussing Auric that I wish that Loot would make an attachment that lowered your defense or your armor, but while giving like a benefit. So if like maybe there was like -3 defense, but plus like gave resistance 1 or something like that, or more damage, right, or something like that. I would love that, and I would put that in this deck because I want people to hit Auric most of the time, so I can make use of counterattack. The only time you don't want people hitting him is if they're shooting him with range attacks because he's not going to be able to hit him back. Let's jump over then to his legacy here. All right, his legacy is Will of the Forge. It has the first ability, Hammer Shaft's Heritage. Whenever you play an item, you may draw a card. Whenever an item you own is destroyed, gain echo equal to its cost. This is probably one of the better card draw engines. I think Morta and Landril is often really good for card draw as well. But this one has the ability of whenever you destroy an item, you get that echo back, which is going to be kind of important as we get into his gameplay. Actually, I'll just review it now. So I really think that there's kind of an ebb and flow when you play this deck of you want to spend all your echo during your deployment, and then during the activation phase, you actually need to be really conscious, and this is why the player agency ranking is so high. Sometimes you just need to break the items, not for the extra damage or to prevent damage at a crucial moment, but because you just need the echo back. Right, so we have a couple of attachments in here that have 2 echo. A lot of these spells that in the deck cost 2 echo, or if you stand on terrain, it could cost 1 less. So just getting the echo as well as priest to gain echo. So there's this kind of flow state of spend all of your echo, put down units and attachments. During your activation, you're going to get echo somehow, and then that echo is going to be used for the spells, and then you kind of just rinse and repeat it. That's kind of the intent. The second ability, which we kind of skipped over, is and kind of mentioned, is Caladra's Fist. While an ally you own is performing attacks or being attacked, you may destroy an equipped item, an item equipped to it. If you do, choose one. The attacker takes 2 extra damage, or the attack deals 2 fewer damage. So, like as I mentioned, again, this is another decision point in your player agency, but there's times when you really need to be conscious of taking the damage or preventing damage or dealing extra damage. Note this is only when an ally attacks. So like, again, this is something where you need to plan sometimes activations ahead, especially if they have spells or other ways of doing damage, not through an attack, which I guess would just be spells. Yeah, if you have your opponent and you know they have like Twin Flames or something like that in the hand, sometimes you need to break an item early to prevent a damage on attack so that a spell can't land and connect and take you off the board. So just be cognizant of that as well. So that's the Legacy and the Seeker. I'm going to get into the actual attachments now. So we're going to be kind of not going in order of unit spells as kind of laid out here on the graphic. But I think this is a big contentious point for a lot of people that try to build Auric decks is they want to jam as many attachments into the deck as possible. This deck is only playing 4 attachments and then 2 things that find attachments, which is the Call to Arms spell here. The main reason for that is because attachments we've talked about are not that great, right? You want to get them early on your unit so that they can kind of gain value over the course of the game. But late in the game, if you draw it, like let's say it's the last turn of the game, that attachment's really not going to do that much. Plus, there's an opportunity you just might not be able to play it on the unit you want because they're engaged. A lot of different reasons. But here we're getting value out of them. We have consistent ways to find them. They're drawing us cards, so they don't even cost a card, which is often the steepest cost of an attachment is just the card they have where they could be a unit or something. So Auric's Legacy kind of removes that limitation or drawback from attachments. But then also, when they get destroyed or we can break them for extra damage, we can get them for echo. They are pretty good. But I think the worst thing is if you're jamming a bunch of items in your card, if you draw a hand and it is like 4 or 5 attachments, that's awful because you can't even play them on your units. So I would really cautious people from putting, a bunch of items in the deck, because you still have to play them on units, and it is still costing Echo to play that. Which, there's 2-drop units like Terric Beast, or 3 drops like Pax's Gorehorn, Citadel Crossbowman. So like these cards that could be attachments could just be units, which are often going to be more value and better than the attachments themselves. So this deck runs 4. I think I could see going up to 6 if you don't play the Call to Arms, but Call to Arms being the spell here, cost 2, is a channel spell. Reveal 1 card at a time from the top of your deck until you reveal an item. Then you play that item without spending its echo, add it to your hand. So not only does this go and get you a card from your deck, you immediately play it. You can play the item on an engaged unit. So, that's one way to get an item on Auric that might be engaged. And then also, this deck does play the Starcast Halls, as you can see. So channel spells, when you're on it, cost 1 less. So you can get actually Echo gain from this. It costs 1 to get one of these 2-drop attachments and then put it on it. And then it also draws you a card on top of it. So this is just a really high value card. And I guess I should have, I'm kind of all over the place. Sorry about that. But though the reason why this deck is so good, if I may step back, is because it is probably one of the better mid-range decks. I do think that Primal Blood and Order of the Shadow Throne has access to some of the best units and some of the best spells now. I didn't think that before the expansion, but the addition of Trial of Stone, Rush to Salvation, Choice of Brutality, I think those are just 3 ridiculously super efficient cards that I think that the reason why this Auric deck is so good is because the card quality of it, meaning just like how good are the cards at face value, are probably better than a lot of other mid-range decks that you can put in. We reviewed Call to Arms, so let's get back into the attachments. Horned Helmet. Horned Helmet is a 2-cost attachment. It adds +1 damage, so this is whether you hit or graze, it's just going to add +1 damage. And then knockback of 4, so when it hits, you can push something away 4 inches. This is sometimes relevant. I think a big thing that you're always evaluating in this deck is how much damage Auric wants to take. Right? He wants to be doing counterattacks and killing people with it out of nowhere, but you do need to just be cognizant of his health pool so that you don't get him too low and then you end up losing him and ultimately probably end up losing the game. The other item is Scout's Boots. This item is amazing on Auric, gives him the +2 movement, which often shores up his speed 5, gives him the speed 7, and then hit and run. Whenever this unit defeats an enemy, it may perform a move for free. So this is what I mean, where Auric can charge in, kill something, and then use hit and run to get out of there and kind of get out of engagement so he doesn't, get collapsed on by your opponent's units and killed or defeated. So hit and run is just, more additional action points, which we're just trying to give them as much as possible. So that's going to do it for the attachments. And I just wanted to call those out of like why we're running so few. With 6 cards in the deck that essentially find an attachment, you are going to, that's, 1/5 of the deck essentially out of 30 cards. So I think you're always going to you have good odds of finding one in the your opening hand. And I'll be honest with you, when it comes to bidding away cards, like what to bid away for the opening hand, I will often bid away the attachment, depending on the matchup. Like Horned Helmet is really good into Sigurith. Scout's Boots can be really good into like Swarmy stuff. But attachments are just, again, that echo generation. When you break them, a little extra damage. But then, a lot of times I love the attachments just for the card draw. And I've noticed that the cards I'm trying to draw into are the cards I would be bidding away instead. So an example, if I have Rush of Salvation or Trial of Stone and an attachment, and then a couple of other units, you're probably not bidding away the units because you want to, have presence on board. But then bidding away the Trial of Stone or any of these other spells, really, like that's what you're hoping to draw into with your attachments, right? So what's the kind of the point of bidding those attachments away is kind of how I view it. Obviously, it's always situational, but in the opening bid, it's just so hard to react or understand how the game is going to unfold. And I feel like those spells, like pretty much all your spells, maybe the Unless Range and Unstoppable Rush, which are usually a little bit harder to play, those could be better okay bids. But after those two, I think I'd rather keep everything else in my hand. Um, so just be cognizant of that in the opening bid, you're often bidding away the attachments. I would keep the spell Call of the Arms just because we talked about how much value it is. It's finding you a card and then also drawing you another card. It often costs one, so it's going to give you Echo. Don't bid that away, but if you get a Horned Helmet or a Scout's Boots in your hand, probably bid that one away. It would be my advice. So, we talked about bidding. We're going to talk about the opening hand. Really, you're looking to hit your Terric Beasts, Pax's Gorehorns, Spirit Shamans, and Valkyris Priests. Honestly, any of the units you can hit in the first turn are fine to play. Just some are more efficient. Obviously the Knight of Astaris, it only has 5 movement, so if you can avoid playing that in your opening turn, that's better to reinforce off of. But the other call out here is just do not play Auric turn 1. I've talked about this with a lot of other Seekers that you want to play. It's just usually not advantageous to play them turn 1 unless you absolutely need to. Like they're getting value or doing something that first action. If your Seeker is just running to go and get a Husk, and you have other things that could grab that Husk, just keep your Seeker back. That way, if you're claiming 2 Husks, you can see what each of your guys gets, right, from the cards that flipped up when you're doing the heart, and then you can choose which one you want to reinforce off of and pass that Husk to Auric, or whoever it is deploying. Plus, you're also getting your Seeker a little bit further up the field or in a better position. You're also not giving away information to your opponent. So if you deploy your Seeker turn 1 and you run him to the right side of the table, well, then your opponent knows that he's on the right side of the table, and maybe he's going to run to the opposite side to kind of avoid that, right? But if you don't deploy him until turn 2, they have to kind of move up the field, and they still have to either do it cautiously and be like, not play further back, or they can make a mistake and overcommit to one side where you can kind of reinforce your Seeker to that side to kind of head them off. It just, keeping back that information and delaying the decision is almost always more advantageous. The only time you wouldn't want to do that is if you're worried about them being really fast and like engaging your unit so that you can't reinforce, and then you're going to have to deploy him further back than you might have already, right? So that's the only thing to call out is like when you're deploying, you're looking at your opponent's deck before the game begins. You've got to understand how fast they are, how tricksy they are. Maybe in those situations you want to deploy Auric turn 1. Otherwise, I'd always advise of playing Auric turn 2, which means that you need to be aware and conscious of leaving up at least 10 Echo to play Auric turn 2, which is often 6 Echo plus the 4 you'll get for the round. If you get a Priest, then you can cheat it a little bit, and you can get leave with 3 Echo. You'll get 3 from the prey ideally, and then another 4 for the end of the round. But with that, Terric Beast, Taxus, Gorehorn, Spirit Shamans, and then Priest just to gain Echo, right? You want to get these down as soon as possible. The other 3 are just really good with Battle Cries and their speed of 8 and 10 to really just get anywhere on the board, contest Husks, kind of, take a better board position, right? You're threatening more board position. So if you run your Terric Beast way up there, everything kind of behind that front line is kind of yours to work with and kind of fall back to or reposition, right? So, there is something to be said about turn 1 in Malediction of pressing up the field as much as you can in a safe manner, right? Like I'm always using my Terric Beast to go last. That way he can get and kind of up the field, and also he can threaten so much of the board, right? 20 inches, if not more, with the Shaman. If the Shaman battle cried him up 10, that it makes your opponent have to play back, especially if you had that last activation. So that's your ideal opening hand, along with whatever attachments you can play and Call to Arms to get attachments, draw cards. But again, the key thing here is leaving on 10 Echo so that you can play Auric turn 2. And the other thing about just the design here of the units is they're all basic, right? All the units in the deck are basic, so you can get really good plays with Battle Cry from the Shaman. Shaman is probably the best unit in this deck, just for everything it can facilitate. But everything else hits fairly hard. 4-2 with Swarm, 4-2 from the Paxos. Crossbowmens are 5-3 with ranged. So really, you're just using your units to make sure you stay up on activation, make sure you don't get in a bad position where they can really, out activate you at the end and set up some really strong kill turn. But you just need to play cautiously this first couple of rounds. You're not trying to rush in there and immediately start doing damage. You just want to take board position and grab your Huss and then set up for really strong, mid game, right? This is a mid range deck. So really trying to get to round 3-4 when you can actually have extra echo, have a bunch of units on board, start utilizing battle cries on Citadel crossbowmen to do additional 5-3 shots. Or other things. And then the knights are just really nice to make you, they're really in here just for their protection. We talked about how Auric is wanting to get hit. So having a knight next by just to, the shield wall +1, not great, but the protection is just so nice to just be able to tap into the 12 HP so that Auric can take a hit, the knight will take all the damage, and then Auric can counter strike back or counterattack back. And again, battle cry to be able to get these knights into position without having to waste their activation, right? To kind of keep up with wherever Auric might be. Otherwise, it is kind of a little bit of a gun line. You are wanting to use your Terric Beasts and Paxos Gorehorns to screen your Shamans and your Priests and even your Crossbowmen. Just make sure, I see a lot of people make this mistake with the Crossbowmen. Your crossbowmen should never really be in front of your engaged units or off by itself. You really need to treat these range guys, like this guy, as well as Soul Whisperer, anything that's really 8 HP or really fragile with a gun. They really should just be standing back and just finding these tiny little angles to do damage with, right? So there's no reason that they need to go first in the activation, walk up and try to shoot something. It's just not worth it. Just play patient, wait for them to come to you. Even if it's not like a high value target, you'll get value out of the crossbowmen, and that's all mid-range decks are trying to do. Is just these little small out value plays from their better card quality, right? So your 3-drop doing 5 damage is going to be better than their 3-drop that does 3 damage essentially. That's what you're looking to do to win. So hopefully you made it to the mid game now, which is around like 3-4, and we'll kind of go into the high value spells that you have here. So the first one is Trial of Stone. And as an ally performs a melee attack, then the defender performs a melee attack against the ally. The owner of the unit that deals the highest damage draws a card. This card is the whole reason why I kind of started making this deck, to be honest with you. Because what happens is you can play this on Auric. He'll get to hit something for, let's say, 5 damage. But then when the opponent makes an attack back on you, you're really hoping that they hit you, because then you get a proc counter attack and hit him again. So this 2-cost spell, which is a channel, which can often be played for 1 because you're playing on Starcast Halls, can essentially do 10 damage at the cost of maybe 3 damage, 5 damage to you, depending on how hard the unit hits. And then it draws you a card on top of that. And to go into that, to even further the combo, you can break the attachment to make sure that your opponent can't hit back more from you. So right, if I'm swinging into another Seeker, I know they do 5-3. If I hit them, I can break my attachment, do 7 damage. Even if they hit me back for 5, I will automatically do more damage than them, right? Or you can break an attachment and have them do less damage, in which case you win the Trial of Stone as well. So this card, not only for the burst damage it can do, but also the card draw, along with the attachments that you're playing, along with the Choice of Brutality, which is another card draw. This deck actually draws its deck very quickly. I've played games where it's gone to turn 5 and I've had like 7 cards left in the deck just because I've played all my attachments. I've done Trial of Stones, I've done Choice of Brutality. It can rip through a deck really quickly and find the cards you need. The second card that I just absolutely love, and it's what kind of protects Auric, as well as just some really crazy combos this card unlocks is Rush of Salvation. This is a 3-cost elite spell. Swift, as an opponent declares an attack against an ally, another ally may perform a move with twice its movement as long as it finishes that action nearby the defender. If it does, it absorbs the damage that would be dealt to the defender. Um, so right away, this is like a spell that pretty much just gives protection, which is great because we talked about how Auric wants to get hit, but he can't take so much damage that they defeat him. So, tapping into your shamans or your priests or anything in your backline that can move up, take a hit for Auric. Auric is still the one that gets hit though. So if it's a melee attack and counterattack, your guy that you played the spell on will take the damage, but Auric gets to counterattack back and do more damage, which is just amazing. But this card has so many little nuanced combos that you can do with it that it's just it. I think it's one of the stronger cards that they've put out. It is a great spell just to catch your opponent off guard that you're going to play on their turn to double move something up the field. So as an example, let's say I have my Pax's Gorehorn in front, right, and engaged up in the line, and all my stuff is behind, and I've even deployed Auric behind. If they go and they attack this Pax's Gorehorn that they think is out of position, I can play Rush of Salvation, play it on Auric, double move Auric up to the Gorehorn, which now he takes the hit for the Gorehorn, which is not great, but the more importantly is I've double moved. I've essentially gotten 2 action points to double move Auric to engaging whatever was probably engaging the Pax's Gorehorn as well. And then as soon as my opponent's done making this attack, the activations are going to go back to me. And now I can activate Auric, and he's in position to swing twice and just kill something. So that's one combo you can do with it. Another thing is, unlike other protection, the protection ability that says any excess damage that defeats the unit goes back to the original target, this does not. So if you have a priest sitting around on 1 HP or a knight on anything on 1 HP, right? And Auric takes, let's say, a crit, right? Or a hit from Thunderstep, 7 damage incoming, maybe it's 9, whatever. You use Rush of Salvation, you bring the model over, it eats the damage, and that extra damage just essentially evaporates, right? So you just kind of really mitigate damage with this by just letting it defeat something that would have been dead probably anyways later that activation. So that's a really strong use case for it. The other one is really, any model can do this, but this is the reason why I love Pax's Gorehorn, is because Pax's Gorehorn has a large base. And so if you have a unit that is your opponent is making a ranged attack, right? And it's against Auric, let's say. But the positioning with it is less than 5 inches, let's say, right? So it's his unit shooting Auric, and it's about 5 inches away. And if I have a Pax's Gorehorn, I can Rush a Salvation on the Pax's Gorehorn. And since it's when an opponent declares an attack, you get to make the movement first, and then the attack happens. If I move my Paxus so that it is in between Auric and the range attack unit, and it's within 1 inch of each of them, all of a sudden my Pax's Gorehorn is now engaging this unit that has to make a range attack because they declared it, which means now I get a proc retaliation on it, and I get to hit this thing that is for free. So I could end up just killing this unit with a Pax's Gorehorn of 4-2 if he wasn't expecting it, and then the range attack never happens. But even then, I'm moving in, I'm getting free damage out of the spell with the retaliation, and I'm cutting off probably line of sight for future shots into Auric to keep him even safer. So, those are just 3 examples of how strong this card can be. But I'm sure there's more. Like, it's one of the better cards that it came out in the expansion, and I just love it. Side note on the Pax's Gorehorn that I want to talk about, I kind of skipped over it, but Pax's Gorehorn has this frenzied ability. I've been playing with this unit a lot lately. Our initial thoughts on it when we did the card reviews was pretty high, but we didn't know how bad frenzied was going to be. Frenzied, I will say, is just a non-factor. Like, this thing might as well. It's a little annoying that you have to activate it first. That's the most annoying thing. But the have to charge, there's just so many ways around it. Deploying models in front of your Pax's Gorehorn so you turn off line of sight, right? If Gorehorn sees a model in front of it and you deploy your own unit directly in front of Pax's Gorehorn, all of a sudden it doesn't have line of sight to it anymore, so it doesn't have to go charging to its death. Or just being able to put it in positions where it can't really find a charge. So That's really strong. Also, it only has to charge if it's not engaged. If it's already engaged, I think there's a lot of value in shifting this thing out of there to a better position just to save it. If you're not going to kill it, if you're not going to kill whatever it's engaged with, and whatever it is engaged with might kill this thing, sometimes shifting it out of there is just a better play, especially if this thing has a relic on it, which sometimes it does because you want to play it early on to grab relics and stuff, and maybe you couldn't pass it to anything. um, and then on top of that, this thing just has incredible stats for a 3 cost unit. 3 attack, 4 2 damage, 12 HP, which is just, yeah, its defense is really low, but I mean, any other basic unit in the game has to hit this thing, at least 4 times, and it's probably more than that because they're going to roll low on some of them. There's very few seekers that can kill this thing in 2 attacks, so it's just the large base is almost a benefit. I also thought the large base would be annoying, but I like it a lot for what I mentioned with Rush for Salvation, being able to reinforce and to engage off of things. I mean, I think this card is really, really good. That was like a little side tangent that I just want to go on. But yeah, back to, so we talked about the 2 card combos, Rush for Salvation, Trial of Stone, Choice of Brutality. This thing is just going in every single one of my Primal Blood decks. The card selection, a little bit of extra damage on it, though, the damage you do with this probably won't be all that great. You can expect maybe like 4 to 5 damage on it. Sometimes it'll be like 2 to 3, but card selection is great, especially when you're already digging super deep into your deck. Just finding a little bit more extra that can just finish off units is often great, especially on Starcast Halls where it'll cost 2. And then your big combo cards. These are really hard to play unless you have a priest in play and you can like break an item, because like I said, you're trying to spend all your echo on units and attachments during the play phase, and then during the activation phase, hopefully you can find echo either through your attachments you're breaking or priest. If you are able to find 5 on Endless Rage, waiting until Auric goes absolutely last, or like rather, your opponent makes their last activation, then you untap Auric with Endless Rage and have him go a second time can often just wreck things. I did this in the last game of the TCS tournament, which will be uploaded shortly. I just wanted to get this one done and out there before I finish 2 more battle reports for it. But Endless Rage is just amazing, especially if you have Auric loaded up with like boots, the relic boots or the hit and run boots, and you have access to additional spells like Trial of Stone. It just can do a lot of work. Unstoppable Rush, this is probably the first card I would look to swap out or cut. It's not really that great, but it is great if you find yourself up on activations and then, Auric goes last, he's way in the back, charge, do like 3 attacks, 3 actions. But this is usually the first card I'm looking to sideboard out for either Cataclysmic Blast or some other stuff as well. So that's the main part of the deck. We'll go quickly into the side deck. First and foremost, the side deck for every single one of my side deck is what am I siding in for the Landro matchup if I run into it. So Landro, really, the way I feel like you play into Landro is with range attacks. So that's really what the Farsight Ambushers and the Warfront Commanders are in there for. I wouldn't necessarily put these in for Sigurith, although Sigurith also doesn't like being range attack, but I think you can have other game. I think that this is enough of a mid-range where you could potentially outvalue Sigurith, so these don't need to come in. The other card that I've actually really like in this deck, and I would, I guess the best way is mid-range decks are mid-range because you can read your matchup, and I think, we'll talk about this in an upcoming episode, but going into your matchup before you play, you need to identify who is the beatdown, which is an old Magic the Gathering article. We'll talk more about it in an upcoming episode, but you need to figure out who is going to be the aggressor and who is going to be more of the defending player or the reactive player. And mid-range decks are really great because they can go either way, right? But it just takes them a couple turns to do that. If you go into a matchup and you think you're going to be the reactive player, not the aggressor, Brighthook Cold Custodian is probably the best reactive card in the game. So if you're playing into Thundersteps, possibly even Sigurith, I would look to bring these in maybe for the Unstoppable Rush or the Endless Rage, or maybe you cut one Pax's Gorehorn, which is a little bit of a aggressive card. Bring these in. These are also great with shamans for battle crying, because you could have Auric go, and then in another turn you can bring the Brighthold Custodian and battle cry it up to where Auric is, or vice versa. Maybe you know where you want to put Auric, so you're going to bring the Brighthold Custodian in a place where you know Auric will end up, but will be within 1 inch. And then since the battle cry movement moved it into position, it's still upright and not activated yet, which means it still has the option to use distract. So that's really good, because again, it's all about managing how much damage Auric takes. You want to get hit, but you don't want to get hit too much, especially if there's like range attacks that can be hitting at Auric. Distract is great to just turn one of those hits into a critical graze of 1 damage. So I would definitely bring these in if you're looking to be more of the, if you think you're going to be the more reactive of the two going into the matchup. And then the last card is really just for against swarms. Yeah, this is, if you think that, I would bring this card into probably with Sigrith as well. Anything that's really going to group up or have a bunch of models on the field that you can hit 3+ models, this is where I would look to probably bring in Cataclysmic Blast. And I would put that in over probably Unstoppable Rush, or like I said, maybe some of the Pax's Core Horns come out. Yeah, that's probably Endless Rage too. Again, Endless Rage is great, but it's really hard to play. So it's another one that I would potentially look to cut. So I think that's going to do it. That's the deck. I will say, look out for the my John Orwick versus Sigrith, which is the final round of the TTS tournament. In that one, I really, got to live the dream of Auric getting fully loaded, fully equipped, doing a bunch of damage, moving around. So yeah, just, what you want to have happen with, every time you play this deck with all the different combos and damage output possibilities. So with that, that's going to do it. If you haven't already, we'd really appreciate you subscribing, liking the video, leaving a comment below. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, until next time, thank you.